Greetings, everyone. Thank you for joining me, especially if you're in my time zone where it's currently 2 o'clock in the morning. The full moon is going to happen in just a few minutes' time, I think about 7 minutes past 2 UK time. Now, the full moon is also accompanied almost directly by the summer solstice. And of course, the summer solstice and the full moon are equivalent moments within their particular cycles, in the sense that they're the highest point of the light. So if a cycle begins from darkness and then rises up into full light halfway through and then descends back down again into darkness for the end of the cycle, then the full moon, the summer solstice, they're both this culmination of the light in their own particular cycles. Midday would be the equivalent in the daily cycle. Now, as you may be aware, if you've seen the email that I send out, I'm about to construct a labyrinth um, outside Wells Cathedral. So in the same position as where you're looking at this one, this is the labyrinth that was part of a course that I ran last March, and we did this labyrinth on Holy Saturday, Easter Saturday, because the labyrinth in a Christian setting very often has an association with the harrowing of hell or the descent into the underworld from Good Friday to Easter Sunday. In this particular instance, it was this labyrinth, what's known as the Cretan labyrinth. Now, I'm going to actually turn it the other way around, the labyrinth, because this is actually the way in which it's depicted on the Cretan coins. And so in this sense, you're descending downwards, you're moving down through the entrance into the labyrinth. And you can see there's the entrance there. And so it was facing, when we constructed this labyrinth, it was facing, well, you'd walk in westwards, as it were, towards Hades, and then you'd come back out again eastwards towards the rising of the morning star. Now, what I want to briefly show you in these slides is how the Chartres labyrinth. I didn't know this. I only just noticed this a few days ago. I saw someone's research. I mean, I think the research has been around for quite a long time, so you may be familiar with this idea already. But the Chartres labyrinth is directly derived from the Cretan labyrinth, not in such an immediately obvious way, but I'll describe it in these images now that I'll show you, and then we'll draw this, well, this particular type of labyrinth that it relates to the Cretan labyrinth and the Chartres labyrinth. And this is the Chartres labyrinth in situ in the Chartres Cathedral in France. Probably, I think it's probably the most famous labyrinth, or certainly one of them. Well worth a visit. The whole cathedral is amazing, and this labyrinth is just one of the great things there. I think it's uncovered on Friday, I believe. That's when the chairs are taken off it and when you can actually walk it. Right, the thing that I want to sort of point out really when I show the Chartres labyrinth is how it's derived from the Cretan labyrinth, but it's also very clearly influenced by Roman labyrinths because it's fourfold in the way that Roman labyrinths are. And there's also said to have been a depiction of Theseus and the Minotaur at the center of the Chartres labyrinth. And again, this is like an analogy of Christ's descent into Hades, the descent into the underworld. Now, the way in which it's like the Cretan labyrinth is that you meander around. You go all over the labyrinth in different pathways throughout the whole of your walk. Whereas with a Roman labyrinth, like this one on the right here, what will generally happen is that you'll walk around a whole quarter of the labyrinth and then move on to the next quarter and walk that whole quarter. So you don't sort of go all over the place, as it were. You just do a quarter at a time. Um, the image at the center is of the Minotaur, and that's very common on a Roman labyrinth. And as I say, it comes into a lot of the Christian labyrinths too. So, for instance, on the Hereford Mappa Mundi, which is an old map of the world, it shows Crete in the Mediterranean. And if you look closely at the island of Crete, it has the Chartres labyrinth on it, because Crete is, of course, where the Minotaur storyline is from, or where the place it's associated with. So let's take a look at how this labyrinth leads to the Chartres labyrinth. We're actually going to backward engineer and go back to the Cretan labyrinth from this one. So I'll just gradually take away the elements. Now there's 11 pathways in the Chartres labyrinth, as you can see. Now what we need to do to get to the Cretan labyrinth is basically to take away the two inner paths and the two outer paths. So if you see where it's 1 and 2, I'm going to take away those pathways. So there's one gone, and now the second ring of pathways, that's gone too. Now, if you look out to the outer part where these cusps are, or lunations, as they're sometimes called, and we'll take away that pathway, and also take away the next pathway too. Now, there's a bit more that needs to be done, but this basically is the Cretan labyrinth. Now, as you'll see, there's a few things that need to be adapted to actually bring it to its completion. And we'll do those straight away. So you see where the red arrow is at the bottom. As you can see, there are these three pathways all coming out. So obviously that's not going to work. We need to do something about that. And what we'll do is just put those two together, like so. Now we do a similar thing up at the top here. So there's these three pathways. These two here will be joined together like that. So that's the whole of that area now done. Now, if we look in the middle area, you see that piece there being pointed to. Again, there's two pathways sort of coming into the center, so we need to do something about that. We'll just make it into one whole pathway like that. And then the equivalent thing is happening also on the left there. So we just make that into one pathway. And so that's all done. It's now a coherent labyrinth. But there is still this Roman element to it, which is that cruciform aspect, that sort of fourfold division of the labyrinth that you get with the Chartres labyrinth. Now we'll get rid of that too, because you don't have that in the Cretan labyrinth. You don't have those sort of that cruciform directions of pathways. You do sort of have a small cross in the middle of the Cretan labyrinth, but not in quite the same way as it is in a Roman labyrinth, where the whole thing is divided into four. So we'll get rid of all of those. And so finally, now what we have is basically the Cretan labyrinth. Now I'll demonstrate it with some dots going through. So if you look at the entrance of the labyrinth on the left, I'm going to begin with some red dots in there, and I'm going to keep on putting all the dots I put in the labyrinth on the left, I'll then put in the labyrinth on the right. So if you look to the Cretan labyrinth on the right, there is the same dots there. Now back to the labyrinth on the left, I'm going to put in that certain amount of red dots there, and the same in the Cretan labyrinth on the right. And now back to the labyrinth on the left. So you'll see what I'm doing here. I'm just sort of going around in bits for this first particular cycle, but now I'm going to do whole cycles after this. So that's one complete cycle that we've got to there, and we'll do the same thing on the Cretan labyrinth. Now you can sort of get a sense of how it's going in the same sort of way. You can see how this is going to go in the same way. So I'm going to change the color of the dots, and I'm going to start from here and do a full cycle of blue dots going around like so. And then we can do the same thing in the Cretan labyrinth on the right. And so that brings us to this point here, and we can now do another cycle going in the opposite direction of green dots, and the same thing in the Cretan labyrinth. So you can see this is the same labyrinth. It's the same pathway, even though it looks different. Now back to this one. So it moves inwards with some purple dots. Same thing in the Cretan labyrinth. And then goes around in an anti-clockwise direction, like so. Then same thing in this labyrinth. Now this is where the style of these two different versions of the same labyrinth, this is where the style really changes what happens. So you can see what's going to happen in this labyrinth on the left. It's going to go up into the middle and then do this full circle all the way around like so. But if we translate that to the Cretan labyrinth, that movement upwards there is here, and then that big cycle around is literally just this and nothing more. Now, if we carry on with some red dots, which give us another anti-clockwise movement, and the same here, and then finally some blue dots to take us nearly to the end, and then finally green dots to take us into the center, and the same thing here. Now, there's the center of the Cretan labyrinth. I mean, it's tiny. So they are exactly the same labyrinths. And as I said, the labyrinth on the left derives directly from the Chartres labyrinth, or rather, this type of labyrinth has been developed into the Chartres labyrinth. The Cretan labyrinth has been developed into the Chartres labyrinth. Right, that was quite an eye-opener to me. I only saw it a few days ago, and I thought I'd show it in this session because what was going to happen was I was going to be constructing a labyrinth outside Wells Cathedral just up until a couple of hours ago. But because the rain came, I changed it to tomorrow night. So if you're around, if you're anywhere near Somerset, the city of Wales, then come in the evening after dark and there'll be a labyrinth of lights outside the west front of the cathedral. Right, so I'm going to get us to draw the labyrinth as I'm going to be doing it tomorrow. So right, thanks for coming, everyone. Um, I went on a very long walk today, and so I'm going to try and be coherent because I'm quite tired. But do enjoy this drawing. Now, as usual, you'll need to have an inch ruler. I shall put my drawing camera on. Well, I'm only going to be drawing on a piece of A4 paper. I've got this larger piece of A3 behind me just because it sort of it does something with my camera setting, so I sort of need to have it there. But I'm only going to be drawing on A4. Okay, there'll just be a few inch measurements to begin with. We want to draw a circle that has a diameter of 1.5 inches. So the radius inevitably needs to be half of that. 3/4 of an inch. So there's the 1 inch. 3/4 is what we need to begin with. Right, I think we might as well um I'm going to get us to put a horizontal line through the paper, but we might as well just mark it out accurately. So I'm going to see 6 inches on the ruler. This is just so I can get the horizontal line in the middle of the page. So that's why I've turned my page this way for a second. And we'll turn it back this way and use those two marks that I've made. If you want, you can just put horizontal line through your page by eye. Just Now we are going to be using a bit of tracing paper as well. So we'll do most of the labyrinth on here, and then we'll do the final version of the labyrinth. And I'll show you. Here's one I prepared earlier. So this is what we're going to draw on this side, and then this is the labyrinth that will come from it. Right, so with your 3/4 of an inch radius, go into the center of your line. Draw a circle. Oh, you can tell it's 2 o'clock in the morning. Now this represents 12 feet of distance if it was being marked out in its full size. Um, so the way we need to understand 1 foot is that it's 1/8 of an inch. Now, don't worry, we won't need to know too much more about that, but that is the rationale for what I'm about to describe here, which is that to we need to mark out in um, 3/8 of an inch at a time. I'm going to make various markings here, each of which are 3/8 of an inch along as we go along, if you see what I mean. So obviously I've got 16ths on my ruler here, so it's going to be 2/16, which is obviously the same as 1/8. So I can go 1, 2, 3. And I'm just going to put a little mark like so. Then 1, 2, 3, another mark. So all these marks are going to be 3/8 of an inch apart from one another in distance. Now you should eventually get to the 1.5 inch mark as you go along. If you do, then you know you're doing it right. And this is how many you need. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, because we're having 8 circles in all. The labyrinth has 8 circles because there's 7 pathways, and so you have 8 circles. So 3/8 of an inch distance between each one of these points. Now I'm just going to draw lots of concentric circles using these various marks here. Yeah, the way that I'll be making the labyrinth tomorrow is with small tea lights. They're actually, for health and safety, it has to be battery powered tea lights. Um, and so they'll all be switched on and it'll be possible to walk on it between 9:30 p.m. and midnight. Right, now we've got to that stage. Let's put in a vertical axis. And I mean, usually I work my way around like that, but I'm actually going to encourage us to just do it this way, just to keep lines, extra lines off the circles that we don't need, as it were. So as you can see, I've opened my compasses up, and it's a sort of indeterminate size I've opened it up to. It's just so that I can draw across somewhere here. So there's no definite size you have to use, just as long as the pencil will clear the circles here and sort of go further up there. Okay, let's put in the vertical axis, and this, of course, should hopefully go through the center of the whole diagram. Right, I'm going to put points of my compasses here. So as you can see, just on the left side of that second circle, and I'm going to actually make the radial measurements on my compasses the equivalent of one path, like so. And draw a circle. Now I'm going to draw a series of these circles at this size. So put all of them in, make sure you put them in the right position. So as you can see, there's this one path between these two, but obviously the center of it is here, so you'll have to go a couple of pathways along to get the center. So make sure that you put them in the correct place. Something that often happens with these labyrinths, quite interestingly, is in the middle area here, you'll have the same thing happening. It's a sort of, I don't know how to describe it really, almost like a sort of inverse symmetry, whereby if you if you begin, for instance, from the right and you move leftwards, and the same with these, move from the right leftwards, you have the same thing happening. So you've got two, gap of one, two, gap of two. And so again, you begin from the right and go to the left, two, gap of one, two, gap of two. So this is the next position I'm drawing from on the actual third circle. I am actually going to put another circle in the middle. I didn't do this at the beginning just because it's another one of these construction circles, so I sort of didn't want it to somehow be sort of looked upon as a pathway because it's not. It's just a construction circle. So this here is the center as we're doing it. The center, as I showed it in the photos a bit earlier on, is much larger. So obviously we're doing it with a smaller center. Right now, if you put your ruler between this point on and this point, so these places that we've just drawn, um, I mean, technically, if you want to be really fussy, it would be if you had a horizontal line going to there, that would be the point. But obviously, I mean, this point is basically it's as good as the same. I'm going to do a line like so. So you see there, I've done a line. Just going to go back to where I was now. Now I'm going to leave, having drawn that line, I'm going to leave a gap of two, one, two, and then my next line, similar sort of thing, is going to be two pathways up. So there's a line that I've done. There's a gap of two, and then this one here. Now this is for sort of, like the the part of the labyrinth where all of the corner turnings are and where you move up further into the center on each occasion. So that's why there's something a bit different going on here. Now I'm going to go to here now, and I'm going to repeat those two lines, except they're going to be staggered by one. So that this it's going to begin from here, and it'd be two, and then a gap of two, and then two. I'll put that in. There. So as you can see, it's the same thing as what happened here, but one path up. Right, I'm also going to draw semicircles from these lines like this. So the same radial measurement as what we were using before. All we need is a semicircle. The Chartres labyrinth has various apparent lunar associations, including 28 of these in obviously this is just a construction line on my diagram here, but there are 28 of these corner turnings whereby you have a sort of a half moon shape. 28, of course, is the number associated with the moon because the sidereal cycle is 27 and a third days, and the synodic cycle is 29 and a half days. So 28 is like a sort of a mean between them. Right. Once you get to this point, you need to have a piece of tracing paper that can go over. So you'll need some tape to tape the tracing paper on. Now, if you don't have tracing paper, you can do the whole thing on one bit of paper, but you'd need to press lightly with your lines, or perhaps use some sort of a pen that will be darker than the pencil lines that you already have. Right, let's put in a few um, straight lines first. The straight lines are just within these circles that we drew, not the circle in the middle. Don't draw anything in there. That's um, we've used that now for what we need. So as you can see, line, line, and then one long complete line here. Put these ones in too. So the semicircles that we just did, so need to have their lines put into. So it should look like this at this point. Now, once all of these lines are in, it's just a matter of drawing in um, parts of the circles, like not quite all. And to know where to stop and start each circle, it's all here in relation to these construction lines. So for instance, you would never draw inside one of these circles. That's a really key thing. As soon as you meet a circumference of one of these small circles, you'll stop. And likewise, the semicircle, like you'd stop there. So that's why we've put them in as circles. Right, so carefully making sure that your compass point has gone into the same hole as what you had in your paper below. Set your compasses to the first circle that we drew. So remember, it's not that small one in the middle. We're not using that anymore. This one here. So the one that has the 3/4 of an inch radius. That's worth checking to all the way around to make sure that you've got what you need. Now this one's going to be most of the circle. As you can see, my hand's in the way, so let me draw it and then you can copy. Right, now the only part of this circle that isn't drawn is this bit here. So I'm moving out to the next circle. Now I'm going to begin from this line here. And then I'm going to stop when I reach. So as you can see, I'll stop there. And then I'm going to start once I get beyond that circle. All the way around, and then again stopping once you get to that sort of D shape there. So like I say, never draw inside one of these little circles, and then as long as you follow that, you should be able to do the whole of this yourself now. So obviously I'm going to draw it too, so you can watch what I do. But if you want to work ahead, oh yeah, and I suppose the other rule is, as you can see, I'm sort of stopping here. I'm not carrying on all the way. Stop here and start again here. Now this time I'm going to go all the way to that central line. So I'm going all the way to here. Now, if you're not keeping up with me, as usual, I'll be putting this onto YouTube, so you'll be able to watch the process again. Right, the next circle that I'm doing is actually going to begin from the central line. And then stop when it reaches this circle up here. Hop over that one. So this one is quite a long one. You do quite a lot of this one. Just up as far as there. Now, once we get to this one, again, we'll begin from there rather than from the central line. So in a similar way to how these lines started from one of those lines of two. And then there'll be a gap here and a gap here at the bottom. So there's that one, started there, gap up here, and a gap down here. So there's the gap with that circle, as well as one here. Now the final pathway is, or the final line rather, the final circle is the whole thing except for just that little area there. My goodness, make sure you don't get lost in the labyrinth. Come back out again. Daedalus, who built the labyrinth in the Greek myths, even he had trouble getting out of his own labyrinth. Labyrinths in literature are places where you get lost, whereas these labyrinths that we draw, they're obviously they're unicursal. So these labyrinths give you the golden thread with which you can come out of the labyrinth, because the underworld is always a place symbolically that you just temporarily pass through before moving beyond it. But this is again a course I'm going to be running at Michaelmas, so do come along to this. I've already filled up about half of this course, so do come along if you're free. It'll be all about the pentagram and the pentagram in the underlying geometric design of the cathedral here in Wales, as well as the symbolism of the pentagram relating to spiritual protection. Now, the next session will be a slightly more reasonable time if you're in my time zone, 11:30 p.m. on the evening of Friday, July the 5th. So do come along to that if you're free. Now, I'll say a final goodbye before um, thanks for coming, everyone. I hope you've enjoyed that. If you're around tomorrow evening, like I say, it'll be in the evening, 9:30 till midnight outside Wells Cathedral. It'll be pretty much the same as the pathway that we've just drawn. It's just like the center will be a tiny bit smaller just so it can fit in. But it'll be about 51 feet. It's going to be a really big labyrinth. So do come along if you're around. Um, I shall see all of you next time if you want to come. And thanks for coming this evening. I'm now going to go to sleep. I'm really tired. So thanks for coming, everyone. And see you again.